to keep, he'll chant, but it's better to keep the camera on the people in here in the sanctuary. And then, but to know is the candles are going to be on the little stand in front of the rabbi. So you're going to need to do a little magic for the camera to see that. But so, right, so it'll be, so Mark, so for these two, are you going to do that here or are you going to do that?
Oh, I'm going to have everyone read from over there.
But
I just had to rest it somewhere.
Okay.
So I'm going to, whoever, they ask Gary and Winnie,
Yeah.
walk over to where you're standing.
So Kiddush and Motzi will happen at the table. It's at the little stand in front of the rabbi.
It's where we had the Chanukiah before, Bob, if you remember.
It's actually fairly close to the chair shot.
Right, the chair shot. That's another way to look at it.
And I see some bergs. Beautiful, thank you.
Thank you guys for your patience as we've tried to readapt here.
All right, Bob, I'm going to disappear. I'll be in the sanctuary.
I bet you the other person's going to be here is going to be Mary.
here, I'm gonna try this. This is what I've been trying. This darn.
Shabbat Shalom. Good Shabbos. Baruchim Habaim. Delighted to welcome those few of you who are with us here in the sanctuary. And those of you who may be joining us in any other of our platforms. We may not be together this Shabbat Eve in space, but we surely are together in time to welcome Shabbat. We do so welcoming Shabbat, singing Hava Neshira. You'll find it on page 643, or you'll also find the words on the screens before you. So I continue back on page 127, or again before you, the words on the screen. We offer thanks, O God, for this Shabbat which unites us in faith and hope, for Shabbat holiness which inspires sacred living, for Shabbat memories glowing even in the darkness, for Shabbat peace born of friendship and love. We offer thanks and blessing, O God, as we continue welcoming Shabbat Lecha Dodi 138 and before you.
Lecha lecha dodi likrat likrat kala pene pene Shabbat nekabela. Lecha lecha dodi likrat likrat kala pene pene Shabbat nekabela la 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 lecha. דודי, לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי, לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. שמור וזכור בדיבורך, ישמיענו אל המיוחד, אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשמו דיברת ברידי, לה 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 לה. לך דודי, לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי, לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי מקור הברכה, וראש מקדם נשוכה, זו מעשה במחשבה תחילה, לה 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 לה. לך דודי, לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי, לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. התעוררי, כי באור קומי אורי שדברי, כבור עיני עלייך נגלה, לה 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 לה. לך דודי, לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי, לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. בואי בשלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוניה מסגולה. בואי חלה, לה 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 לה. לך דודי, לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי, לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה, לה 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 לה. לך דודי, לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי, לקראת קלה, בני שבת נקבלה.
On pages 145 and 4, entrances to holiness are everywhere. The possibility of ascent is all the time, even at unlikely times and through unlikely places. There is no place on earth without the presence.
יתקדש ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעמד יברח חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכנו ויומכנו וחיי דכו בית ישראל, בגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך, לעלם לימי עמיה יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי לקודשה בריחו, לילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בימה, ואמרו אמן. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 la, ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 la. Baruchu et Adonai Hamevorach.
you together, Baruch Atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim, b'chachma poteach she'arim uvitfuna mishanei tim umachalif et hazmanim, misader et hakochavim b'mishmeroteihem barakia kirtzono, borei yom v'layla, golel or mipnei choshech v'choshech mipnei or, Uma'avir yom umevi laila umavdil ben yom uven laila Adonai tzevaot shmo. El chai v'kayam tamid jimloch alenu le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai hama'ariv aravim.
Ahavat olam ben Yisrael Amcha Havta Torah u'mitzvot Chukim u'mishpatim Otanu limadta Aken Adonai Eloheinu v'shochbenu v'kumenu נצליח בחוקיך ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך לעולם ועד כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו ובהם נגע יומם ולילה נגע יומם ולילה ואהבתך תסיר ממנו לעולמים ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל אוהב עמו ישראל שמע ישראל Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Yevod Malchuto Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים, אני אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
On page 157 or before you. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go it is eternally Egypt, that there is a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands, marching together.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה. מלכותך ראו בניך, בוקי הים לפני משה ומרים, זה עליינו ואמרו Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed, le'olam va'ed. V'ne'emar kifad Adonai et Yaakov, u'gialo miyad chazak mimenu. Baruch ata Adonai ga'ai Yisrael. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Ushmo tzedkenu uvoenu l'chaim u'l'shalom me'ata ve'ad olam. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, v'hamidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Ha'amidenu shomreinu l'chaim.
Blessed are you, eternal one, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah Adonai haporech sukat shalom aleinu, v'al kol amo Yisrael, v'al Yerushalayim.
V'shameru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לגorotam ברית עולם, ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם לעולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת וינפש. אדוני, אנננננננ שפתי תפתח, אננננננ ופי יגיד, ופי יגיד תהילתך. אנננננננ אדוני, אננננננ שפתי תפתח, אננננננ ופי יגיד, ופי יגיד תהילתך. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו, אלוהי אברהם, אלוהי יצחק ואלוהי יעקב, אלוהי שרה, אלוהי רבקה, אלוהי רחל ואלוהי לאה. האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה, אתה גיבור לעולם רעי, מחיה מתים אתה רב להושיע, משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מחכה לחיים בחסד, מחיי מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומדומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמנת להחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיה המתים, אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
Please be seated as I continue on page 173, or the words before you on the screens. Disturb us, Eternal One, ruffle us from our complacency. Make us dissatisfied with the peace of ignorance, the quietude which arises from a shunning of the horror, the defeat, the bitterness, and the poverty, physical and spiritual, of humans. Shock us, Eternal One, deny to us the false Shabbat which gives us the delusions of satisfaction amid a world of war and hatred. Wake us, O God, and shake us from the sweet and sad poignancies rendered by half-forgotten melodies and rubric prayers of yesteryears. Make us know that the border of the sanctuary is not the border of living, and the walls of your temples are not shelters from the winds of truth, justice, and reality. Disturb us, O God, and vex us. Let not your Shabbat be a day of torpor and slumber. Let it be a time to be stirred and spurred to action. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. You are with us in our prayer, our love, and our doubt, in our longing to feel your presence and do your will. You are the still clear voice within us. Therefore, O God, when doubt troubles us, when anxiety makes us tremble, when pain clouds the mind, we look inward for the answer to our prayers. There may we find you, and there find courage, insight, and endurance. And let our worship bring us closer to one another, that all Israel and all who seek you may find new strength for your service. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otcha levadcha b'yira na'avod. We acknowledge with thanks that you are the eternal our God and the God of our ancestors forever. You are the rock of our lives and the shield of our salvation in every generation. Let us thank you and praise you for our lives which are in your hand, for our souls which are in your care, for your miracles that we experience every day, and for your wondrous deeds and favors at every time of day, evening, morning, and noon. O good one whose mercies never end, O compassionate one whose kindness never fails, we forever put our hope in you. For all these things, O sovereign, let your name be forever praised and blessed. O God, our Redeemer and Helper, let all who live affirm you and praise your name in truth. Blessed are you, Eternal One, your name is goodness, and you are worthy of thanksgiving. Baruch atah Adonai hatov shimcha, ulecha na'eh lehodot.
Shalom Rav Yisrael Amecha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amecha Tasim Leolam. Ki ata Melech Adon Lechol HaShalom. Ki ata Melech Adon Lechol HaShalom. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. V'tov enecha levarech et amecha Yisrael bechol ed ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rav וישראל עמך תשים לעולם שלום רב וישראל עמך תשים לעולם תשים לעולם תשים לעולם ברוך אתה אדוני המברך את עמו ישראל בשלום. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ואמרו Amen. Ose shalom bimromav, u'ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'emru Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'imru Amen ve'imru Amen ve'imru
In the week to come, among those couples who will be observing their wedding anniversaries are Beth and Kevin Clement and Babak and Caitlin Yasme. Our God and the God of the generations before us, we thank you for our sacred heritage of marriage and family life. Throughout history, marriage has been the firm foundation to our people when we were driven from place to place and when we were at rest and settled. We praise you, O God, for sanctifying your people Israel by the covenant of marriage. We thank you for the fullness of joy of those who are celebrating the anniversary of their wedding in this season. Their lives are blessed with the gift of loving comradeship and of devotion to each other. Their joys are heightened, their difficulties lightened as they face life together. May their companionship continue to bring them strength. May their home be hallowed by your divine guidance. May their lives continue to be enriched by affection and mutual respect. May they be blessed with peace and health and contentment. As together we all say, Amen. As I continue on page 371, and then those of you on the screens will find the words in front of you shortly. Mishberach avotenu v'imotenu, Avram, Yitzchak, v'Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, v'Leah. Hu yivarech et hacholim, may the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal those of our friends who are ill. Mark Ackerman, Debbie Alpert, Reverend D. Anderson, Barbara Pal, Allison Arthur, David Bankoff, Joel Barwick, Louise Beyer, Vivian Borkin, Adeline Serena, Hadja Bosse, Joel Bradley, Bob Brasner, Diane Clark, Melinda Stefanski Collins, Robert Crandall, Patrick Doherty, Kathleen Duplair, Robert Fono, Greg Garcia, Leah Bat Chaiki Mordechai, Michael Greenfield, Gevura Bat Gidl Finchas Baruch, Chloe Halperin, Rosalind Halperin, Scott Halperin, Sam Hanna, Edith Howard, Carrie Huxley, Jimmy Kaplan, Mara Kniaz, Rachel Kniaz, Ed Knox, Katie Kokel, Barbara Lieb, Kathy Liddell, Mitch Marks, Wendy Mayer, Yosef Raphael, Ben Yehudit, Zavi Ram, Robert Goldkravit, Ellen Levin, Lenore Levin, Nikki Levin, Ron Levin, Artie Majeski, Sydney Miracle, Lipman Pinkas, Ben Lebu, Mendel, Ken Sandler, Herlinda Schock, Floyd Schwade, Ruth Bat Irene Avraham, Gary Shovers, Claudia Steele, Marty Stein, Susie Gigi Stein, Jenny Vergetis, Leo Weinshell, Jim Wilkinson, Greg Whimsy, Rebecca Zuckerman, Harav Chaim Ben Rachel Leo Tzvia Cohen, Nadiva Zayat Bat Alanu Vinyamin Bear, Shoshana Bat Harav Ari V'Shoshana, Miriam Tzvia Bat Peril, Chana Leah Bat Joyce Valian, David Pinchas Ben Leah V'Yaakov, Rachel Bat Devora V'Avraham, and to those names we add. And is there anyone who is with us on Zoom to add a name? If you'll raise your hand visually or virtually, and I'll call on you and then unmute. Edie.
Sandy Adlin and Dennis Burke.
Dennis Burke, Sandy Adlin. Lisa.
Elizabeth Lewis,
Elizabeth
Cookie Krasno, Karen Cookie Krasno, and Lindsay Taylor.
Taylor and Karen Cookie Krasno. Sherry.
Laura Sussman and Kim Sussman.
Kim Sussman, Laura Sussman. Monica.
Veem Lockard.
Lockard. Because we are praying on their behalf. May the Blessed Holy One be filled with compassion for their health to be restored, their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send them a complete renewal of spirit and of body. Source of all breath, healer of all beings, protect them and restore their hope. Strengthen all of us that we may bring strength. Keep us in health that we may bring healing. Help all of us know again a time when we can breathe without fear. As together we all say, Amen.
May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mi sheberach imotenu mikor habracha. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of spirit, the renewal of body, and let us say, Amen.
May well have heard the story of two people sitting next together, each other, on an airplane. One, noting that the other was reading a text, asked, well, what do you do? And came the rabbi, answered the person, I'm a rabbi. "Oh," came the response, "I guess it all can be boiled down to do unto others." The rabbi let a little time pass and then asked the other person, "And what do you do?" Came the response, "I'm an astrophysicist." And then the rabbi responded after a moment and said, "Oh, I guess it can all be boiled down to twinkle, twinkle, little star." So take the Talmudic debate I shared with you back on Yom Kippur about what it all boils down to. I don't know how many of you may remember this. It's found in the Jerusalem Talmud in Nidarim 30b, and in slightly different forms in a couple of other places, where Rabbi Akiva and Ben Azai posit what each considers to be the greatest principle in all of Torah. Rabbi Akiva takes his from Leviticus chapter 19, verse 18, wherein we are told to love your neighbor as yourself. Needless to say, Ben Azai disagrees and offers instead chapter 5, verse 1 of Genesis, wherein we read, and I quote, "This is the record of Adam's line," unquote, as an even greater principle. The disparity between the two verses seems at first glance absolutely glaring. Loving one's neighbor surely must be far more important than a genealogical record. But that disparity diminishes the moment one reads the second part of Ben Azai's chosen verse. For that verse continues as follows. When God created the human being, I'm sorry, everything keeps slipping up here. Let me try to adjust it for a moment. When God created the human being, God made the human being in the likeness of God. While Akiva places loving one's neighbor as Torah's foremost principle, in comparison to what Ben Azai is going to ask, hard as it may seem to you, loving one's neighbor is relatively easy. After all, he, she, they are most likely to look kind of like oneself, and maybe, just maybe, especially the way we Americans are living these days, think like oneself. But Ben Azai is suggesting something far more profound, something that has less to do with love and more to do with responsibility and obligation. For if we all created in God's image, in the likeness of God, each of us is responsible to and for every other person. Writes Emmanuel Levinas, "The face orders and ordains me." Unlike love, which can be reciprocal, it is precisely insofar as the relationship between the other and me is not reciprocal that I am subject to the other. I'm responsible regardless of how different the other may be from me. No matter how different they may be physically or mentally or cognitively, no matter whether they live next door or thousands of miles away, or have come from thousands of miles away to live perhaps almost next door, no matter their sexual orientation or marital status, no matter their race or religion or ethnicity. But what if we do not see? So take the last three plagues contained in this week's Torah portion, which are so very different from the first 7 plagues. These last 3 all seem to emanate out of darkness. So these are the last 3. They're taken from this week's Torah portion called Bo. I'm going to read from chapter 10, verse 12 of Exodus through chapter 11, verse 7. If you want to follow along, you'll find it on page 407 of the Chumashim. The Chumashim are the bigger black books which you'll find in the pockets of some of the chairs around you, or if you reach right behind you, you may find literally in the pocket of a chair behind you. Again, page 407. Then the Eternal One said to Moses, "Hold out your arm over all the land of Egypt for the locusts, that they may come over the land of Egypt and eat up all the grasses in the land, whatever the hail has left." So Moses held out his rod over the land of Egypt, and the Eternal drove an east wind over the land all that day and all night. And when morning came, the east wind had brought the locusts. Locusts invaded all the land of Egypt and settled within all the territory of Egypt in a thick mass. Never before have there been so many, nor will there ever again be so many. They hid all the land from view, and the land was darkened. And they ate up all the grasses of the field and all the fruit of the trees which the hail had left, so that nothing green was left of tree or grass of the field in all the land of Egypt. Pharaoh hurriedly summoned Moses and Aaron and said, I stand guilty before the Eternal your God and before you. Forgive my offense just this once, and plead with the Eternal your God that this death be removed from me. So he left Pharaoh's presence and pleaded with the Eternal. The Eternal caused a shift to the very strong west wind, which lifted the locusts and hurled them into the Sea of Reeds. Not a single locust remained in the territory of Egypt. But the Eternal stiffened Pharaoh's heart, and he would not let the Israelites go. Then the Eternal One said to Moses, Hold out your arm toward the sky, that there be a darkness upon the land of Egypt, a darkness that cannot be touched. So Moses held out his arm toward the sky, and thick darkness descended upon all the land of Egypt for 3 days. People could not see one another, and for 3 days no one could move about. But all the Israelites enjoyed light in their dwellings. Pharaoh then summoned Moses and said, Go, worship the Eternal. Only your flocks and herds shall be left behind. Even your dependents may go with you. But Moses said, You yourself must provide us with sacrifices and burnt offerings to offer up to the Eternal our God. Our own livestock too shall go with us. Not a hoof shall remain behind, for we must select it for the worship of the Eternal our God. And we shall not know with what we are going to worship the Eternal until we arrive there. But the Eternal stiffened Pharaoh's heart, and he would not agree to let them go. Pharaoh said to him, Begone from me, take care not to see me again. For the moment you look upon my face, you shall die. And Moses replied, You have spoken rightly. I shall not see your face again. And the Eternal One said to Moses, I will bring but one more plague upon Egypt and upon Pharaoh. After that he shall let you go from here. Indeed, if he let you go, he will drive you out of here, one and all. Tell the people to borrow each man from his neighbor and each woman from hers objects of silver and gold. The Eternal disposed the Egyptians favorably toward the people. Moreover, Pharaoh himself was much esteemed in the land of Egypt among Pharaoh's courtiers and among the people. Moses said, Thus says the Eternal, Toward midnight I will go forth among the Egyptians, and every male firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die. From the firstborn of Pharaoh who sits on his throne to the firstborn of the slave girl who is behind the millstones, and all the firstborn of the cattle. And there shall be a loud cry in all the land of Egypt, such as never been or ever will be heard again. But not a dog shall snarl at any of the Israelites, at human or beast, in order that you may know that the Eternal makes a distinction between Egypt and Israel. Locusts, and of course the darkness they cause, and then the death of the firstborn. The locusts covered the whole land, and the land was darkened. Yeah, we can kind of understand that darkness. The darkness of the slaying of the firstborn, that, of course, tragically we understand. But deep darkness, the Hebrew is choshech afela. It's the thick darkness, the deep darkness. And you know, what do we do when darkness descends? These days, we turn on the lights. Back in those days, of course, they may not have had electricity, but they surely knew about fire and lantern and candles. We also know in verse 23 that the Israelites enjoyed light in all of their dwellings. So this is the darkness that has always confounded me. And so it's really not a physical darkness, but a darkness of the heart. The hint is in the test itself in verse 23. Lo ra'u ish et achiv. People could not see one another. A person could not see his brother, her sister. Maybe this is what meant by the hardening or the stiffening of the heart. They could see, but they really couldn't see, for they didn't feel for each other. They did not think they were responsible for each other. They did not care for one another. They were blind to each other's needs. They didn't recognize God's image. That was the darkness of Egypt, the Mitzrayim, the narrow straits from which we had to leave, seeking freedom. And I have said time and again, I'm afraid that darkness once again threatens to envelop us. The language we hear once again that dehumanizes others, and so many of our leaders who excuse such language. So many are blind to the acts of others, unable or perhaps unwilling to speak out when evil in small and large ways occurs. And we Jews know the story far too well. We are, of course, the proverbial canary in the coal mine. I've said it before, I've said it again, I will do it once more. As Americans, we know how unique an experiment this country is. As Jews, we know how fragile a democratic community can be. This is the darkness we have to be very careful of. A darkness now that seems so thick. So now again, words I shared. Remember the debate with which the Mishnah begins? Any of you? I've talked about it 3 or 4 times, wrote about it once. Good, that means I can repeat myself. Unless I had said so, you wouldn't know. Okay. The Mishnah begins with a debate about when does the night end and morning begin. Okay? It all has to do with the questions, from when may one recite Shema in the evening, and from when may one recite Shema in the morning. Remember, we're commanded when we lie down and when we rise up, so we have to know when the evening is and when the morning is, when night has ended and day has begun. So 2 opinions are offered, both seemingly concerned with the amount of natural light needed to make a visual distinction. But the Gemara, this is the part that with the Mishnah forms the Talmud, extends the debate. One rabbi says you have to distinguish between a wolf and a dog. Another says you have to be able to distinguish between a donkey and a wild donkey. None are sufficient for dispelling the darkness, for making that visual distinction. And the final suggestion, which becomes Jewish law, remember? You have to be able to distinguish an acquaintance from a distance of 4 cubits. This is a cubit, about 1.5 feet, which means 6 feet. In other words, when you can see and recognize your brother, your sister, when you recognize the image of God in the face of the other, only then can the deep darkness, which is this plague, truly be dispelled. Only then can a new day truly dawn. With that, we continue with Aleinu. You'll find it on page 586, as together we rise.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו כדי הרצון, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ, ומושב עיקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובהי מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אינו אמת מלכנו אבן זולתו, כך כתוב בתורתו, וידעת יום וחשבות אל לבביך. ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד.
Al ken nekavel lecha Adonai Eloheinu lerot mehera b'tiferet uzecha, v'taken olam b'malchut Shaddai. Eternal our God, how soon we hope to behold the perfection of our world, guided by a sacred covenant drawn from human and divine meeting. May we gain wisdom in our lives, overflowing like a river with understanding, loved each of us for the peace we bring to others. May our deeds exceed our speech, and may we never lift up our hand but to conquer fear and doubt and despair. Rise up like the sun, O God, over all humanity. Cause light to go forth over all the lands between the seas, and light up the universe with the joy of wholeness, of freedom, and of peace.
ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
Our thoughts turn now to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and of death. As we take a few moments to read silently any one of the meditations between pages 592 and 597, or whatever own prayers may be sitting on your own hearts. As the names of your dear ones are mentioned, we invite you to rise in their loving memory as we remember the relatives and friends of our congregation who have gone before us into life eternal. We remember tonight the names of Ronald A. Sackheim, Louis Ferris, Rhoda L. Frank, Gerald McKinney, Sylvia Stern, and Aline Altschul, who were laid to rest recently. We remember also the names of Selma Altschuler, Olga Heller-Arnstein, Belle Baer, Irving Bishop, Roy R. Blumberg, Harry Borzak, Bernard Brackman, David Cabrera, Roy O. Conan, Charlotte A. Eisenberg, Sophie L. Embinger, Elaine L. Kahn, Eugene S. Pfefferman, Minnie Goloff, Sam Gordon, Ronald H. Hecht, Bernard David Heifetz, Ella Schusser-Kagan, David Karger, Israel S. Klein, Michael L. Kritzik, Gertrude Z. Krom, Rose Yampel Kalikow, Lena J. Margolis, Shirley Masters, Frank D. Matris, Jack E. Myers, Ruth Mullen, Irving Muscat, Esther Newlander, Benjamin E. Nicole, Mary Malkin Pass, Max Peerless, Sarah S. Pickar, Donald A. Pollock, Ethel Rabinovitz, Louis Rabinovitz, Ella C. Raffalo, Morris Rashman, Burton Gerald Reisner, David Resnick, Dolores Ribner, Marshall Rosen, Joshua Rubenstein, Samuel Sadek, Jerry Saltzman, Edith Schneider, Rose Schneiderman, Gertrude J. Siegel, Marie Huber Seelig, Miriam Simon, Robert H. Snow, Joseph Viner, Jerome J. Werner, Bernice Ziegler, and Sam Zuckerman, whose anniversary of death is remembered tonight. If there are others here in mourning or observing yahrzeit, if you raise your hand and rise and mention the name of your dear one. And those of you who are with us on Zoom, if you have a name to mention, if you'll also raise your hand visually and virtually, and when I call on you, mention the name of your dear one. We also, Cantor?
Norman Goldenberg.
Dan, is that, or Nadine, is that a hand I see? I can barely see the top of the screen. I'm sorry here.
Yes, yes, it is. Sue Fono and all the souls who passed as a result of the uncontrolled mob attack in Washington a year ago today.
Yeah. We also remember those who perished in the Shoah who have no yahrzeit dates. We pray, may their souls be bound up in the bond of eternal life. May their repose be peace. Zichronam livracha, may their memories forever be a blessing. As we now ask the congregation to join with those who mourn in the words of Kaddish, page 598. Yit gadal v'yit kadash v'yablich malchutei v'chayechon u'v'yomechon Beit Yisrael v'agala v'zman karim
Amen.
Almei almaya Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmedi dekudsha barichu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran bi'alma v'yimru amen. Ye'eh shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Osei shalom bimromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. May the one who makes peace in the high heavens above send peace down here to us, to all Israel and to all the world, as together we all say, amen. You may be seated. There are a number of announcements in the service bulletin. Do we want to make any other ones tonight? For those of you who are with us on Zoom, the service bulletin has also been uploaded. You can find it. Where can they find it, Andrew?
It's on the website, just where they look to see the stream on the website.
So where you look to see the stream on the website is where you can find the service bulletin, right? We want to thank half of the Berg family, Alex and Amanda, for being our greeters tonight here. Nothing else? We're going to do something a little different tonight, so you know. We'll have a closing song and benediction, but we're all going to kind of do Kiddush, Motzi, and Benchlicht together tonight, albeit not in that order. It'll be Benchlicht and Kiddush and Motzi. Those of you who are with us on Zoom and those of you on the stream, if you wish to stay with us. So after our closing song and benediction, if you stick around just a little longer, Amanda and Alex will be leading us in the candle lighting and in Kiddush and Motzi. And those of you who are here can, as you leave, pick up some wine and some challah to take with you as you leave. Our Shabbat morning study minyan tomorrow will be only online. It'll just be virtual. And then further decisions about what is coming in the weeks to come. Our Safe Return Task Force is meeting on Monday to make other decisions. So our closing song is, I don't have a service bulletin in front of me. Oh,
Closing song. I can tell our closing song is Biyado, which you can find on page 625 or the screen in front of you.
As we rise.
Biyado af kidruchi be'et ishan ve'ayra ואם רוחי גביעתי, אדוני לי ולא יירא. ואם רוחי גביעתי, אדוני לי ולא יירא. My soul I give to you, my spirit in your care. Draw me near, I shall not fear. Hold me in your hand. Draw me near, I shall not fear. Safely in your hand. הפקיד רוחי בעת ישן וירא ואם רוחי גוויתי אדוני לי ולא יירא ואם רוחי גוויתי אדוני לי ולא יירא.
Adonai Osli Amo Yitain. May the Eternal One grant us all strength. Adonai Yevarechet Amo Vashalom. May the Eternal One bless us all with the most precious gift of all, the gift of shalom, of peace. Shabbat Shalom, good Shabbos. For those of you who are all staying for Bench Licht and Kiddush and Motzi, you'll find, those of you who are here will kind of find it between pages 120 and 123 in the prayer books. You may be seated except for Amanda and Alex, who will be coming up, and Amanda will be starting on page 121.
O source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us to find knowledge by which to live. Lead us to take the words we shall speak into our hearts and our lives. Bless all who enter this sanctuary in need, all who bring the offerings of their hearts. May our worship lead us to acts of kindness, peace, and love.
Ya la 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 la, 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 ya la 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 la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
And there was evening, and there was morning the sixth day. The heaven and the earth were finished, and all their array. On the seventh day, God finished the work that God had been doing. And God ceased on the seventh day from all the work that God had done. And God blessed the seventh day and declared it holy, because on it God ceased from all the work of creation that God had done.
ויער ויבוקר יום השישי, ויחולו השמיים והארץ, וכל צבאם, ויחל אלוהים ביום השביעי, מלאכתו אשר עשה, וישפוט ביום השביעי מכל מלאכתו אשר עשה. ויברך אלוהים את יום השביעי, ויקדש אותו, כי בו שבת מכל מלאכתו, כי בו שבת מכל מלאכתו, אשר ברא, אשר ברא, אשר ברא אלוהים לעשות. סברי, לחיים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם בורא פרי הגפן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר קידשנו במצוותיו ורצבנו בשבת קודשו באהבה וברצון הנחילנו זיכרון למעשה וראשית כי הוא יום תחילה למקרא קודש זכר ליציאת מצרים כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים בשבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת.
Yeah, you could have some, Alex. Go ahead. And then we're going to bring the challah over to the main table, and Alex is going to start us all off with motzi with a long ba, and then we'll join him. So, Alex, if you want to go get the challah. And hold on to it with your mom. And if you'll start us off with a big ba, we'll all join in somehow. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam hamotzi lechem min haaretz b'te'avon.
Shabbat Shalom.
Just here, take it from my side.
Shabbat shalom.
Okay.
Yada dai 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 dai, yada dai 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 dai, yada dai 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 dai, yada dai dai dai, yada dai 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 dai, yada dai 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 dai, yada dai 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 dai, yada dai dai dai. Yada dai 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 dai, yada dai 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 dai, yada dai 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 dai, yada dai dai dai, yada dai 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 dai, yada dai 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 dai. Yada dai 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 dai. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. And
Shabbat
Zygus-
Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.